Questions 26 through 29. Listen to a teacher talking in a history class.
The Vikings were warriors who terrorized Europe between 700 and 1000. They also explored the coast of Europe and the North Atlantic and even reached America. The Vikings lived in Scandinavia, the northern part of Europe. They conquered and raided parts of England, France, and Germany, and even got as far south as Spain and Italy. Viking ships explored Iceland and Greenland, and at about 1000, the Vikings founded a town in North America, but it didn't last for very long. The Viking Age began at a time when the population of Scandinavia started to grow. Historians believe that because there was not enough farmland to live on. Many Vikings looked for places to settle outside of Scandinavia. They also made faster ships, with which they could travel to farther places. The Vikings lived on farms or in villages. There were three groups of people. The nobles were the kings or chiefs of each village. They also included people who were very rich. The freemen were farmers or merchants. The third group were the slaves, who were captured when the Vikings fought against other people. Most of the Vikings were farmers. They grew fruits and vegetables, as well as barley and oats. They also raised cattle, goats, pigs, and sheep. Some Vikings were fishermen, and others were good at building ships. In bigger villages, Vikings lived as merchants. They sailed a lot and traded furs, gold, silver, and other things. Most Viking men wore trousers that reached to the knee and a long-sleeved pullover or shirt. Women wore dresses made of linen or wool. All Vikings wore leather shoes. Viking houses were one-story buildings with slanted roofs. Some houses only had one room. The walls were made of wood or stone. The roof was covered with shingles or straw. In every house, there was a hearth that gave Vikings heat and a place to cook.
Now, answer the questions. 26. What is the talk mainly about? 27. Why did the Viking people invade other countries? 28. Who were the slaves in Vikings' villages? 29. What can be inferred from the talk? 30 through 33. Now you will hear part of a radio program.
Dr. Harriet Hiscock, why do we roll over when we're asleep? What is it, when we are lying in bed, that makes us all of a sudden uncomfortable on one side and needing to change to the other? Rolling over in bed is something we take for granted, yet it appears we know very little about this basic human movement.
No one that I'm aware of has specifically researched this. Babies start to roll at about 4 months. Before this time, they don't have the coordination to do it, and they are simply not strong enough. There's a big innate drive so that they learn to roll so that they can get on all fours and start to crawl. And rolling over is a developmental milestone. Rolling over during sleep for adults and children is simply a matter of getting comfortable.
If you just lie in the same position all night, you'd probably get stiff joints and problems with the skin.
I think movement while we are asleep is a protective mechanism to prevent problems developing from prolonged pressure, such as reduced blood flow to certain parts of the skin. When patients are paralyzed for a long time, for example in intensive care, they need to be turned regularly to prevent pressure sores. Unpleasant stimuli from pressure on pain receptors initiate a coordinated rolling over response. And this can happen whether we are asleep or simply lying awake in bed. We've all experienced this when sitting in one position. We can tolerate it for a certain length of time, and then we have to move. I suspect it's probably a similar sort of response even when we are asleep. The signals from the sensory receptors would travel up the back of the spinal cord to the brain, possibly to the activating system, which is important in sleep and waking. Then signals to make movement happen would travel down tracks in the front portion of the spinal cord and go out to the muscles. And the most common reason for someone turning over in their sleep is probably their spouse nudging them to stop them snoring.
Now answer the questions. 30. What is the talk mainly about? 31. Why do babies start to roll at about 4 months? 32. In what condition will we feel uncomfortable? 33. Why do men snore during sleep? 34 through 38. Now you will hear a speaker talking to a class on a trip to the Maldives.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Maldives. Maldives has deep blue seas, turquoise reefs, white sandy beaches, and palm trees. It is also a place full of character, where its people have long spent their days languishing in the very essence of ideal living. While it is the perfect place to sit on a beach and watch a sunset with a cocktail balanced on your hand, it is also a geographical marvel, knowing that there are thousands of fish swimming around the vivid corals just a few feet away from where you sit. The Maldives lies in 2 rows of coral islands in the Indian Ocean, just across the equator. The country is made up of 1,190 coral islands, spread over 90,000 square kilometers. The reefs of the islands, alive with countless types of underwater creatures and vibrant corals, protect the islands from wind and wave action of the surrounding vast oceans. This unique structure of reefs and channels makes navigation almost impossible for the passerby without sufficient information about these waters. 99% of the Maldives is made up of sea. The people of the islands are widely dispersed across the islands. About 90 islands are developed as tourist resort, and the rest are uninhabited or used for agriculture and other livelihood purposes. Maldives has 2 distinct seasons: dry season, northeast monsoon, and wet season, southwest monsoon, with the former extending from January to March and the later from mid-May to November. The weather in the Maldives is usually picture perfect: sunlit days, breezy nights, balmy mornings, and iridescent sunsets. The temperature hardly ever changes, which makes packing for your holiday an easy task. With the average temperature at about 30 degrees Celsius throughout the year, the sun is a constant on most days, shining through treetops, creating lacy patterns on your feet, healing cold bones with its warmth. Throughout the day, the sun will make itself known, ensuring that it will be remembered and missed like an old friend as you pack your suitcases to leave.
Now, answer the questions. 34. Which statement about the environment of the Maldives is not true? 35. Where is the Maldives located? 36. What can be inferred from the passage? 37. Which is true about the Maldives? 38. What is the weather like in the Maldives? Questions 39 through 42. Listen to part of the discussion in a science class.
Have you watched the news? The earthquake was really terrible.
Yes, but why didn't those scientists, not sure what to call them, who study earthquakes, tell the people it was going to happen?
Seismologists. They didn't because no one can predict earthquakes. They just happen at random.
Come on. We learned about how earthquakes come from all that pressure in the rocks building up. Then they just crack. So if they measure the pressure, surely they can predict the earthquake.
I guess they try, but it's too complicated. They might be able to tell something's going to happen sometime in the next few years, but they can't tell exactly when.
I heard that seismologists in China look at animals. When dogs get frightened, they know the earthquake is about to happen. But it doesn't always work.
It's like that flood we had. The weathermen said it would rain, but they never told us we'd get washed out. Well, the weather's complex too. It's hard to predict precisely.
In our science lessons, all our experiments are meant to be precise, aren't they? How come those experts with all their training can't get it right?
How do they try to predict earthquakes and weather and climate and stuff like that anyway?
Models. They use a computer to make like a pretend Earth, and then they run it to see what happens in the future?
How do they know their model acts like the real world?
I don't know. I guess they don't really. I reckon they're biased. Look at all those scientists going on about global warming. They're just trying to scare us so they can make more money from their work. They predict what suits them.
Every scientist has to raise money from somewhere. Does that mean they are all biased?
They shouldn't be. Science is meant to be unbiased. Anybody researching the same stuff should get the same answer.
Well, they don't. I just don't know who to believe on global warming. How can you work out who's telling the truth?
Now, answer the questions. 39. What do the man and girl talk about? 40. Why does the girl say, so if they measure the pressure, surely they can predict the earthquake? 41. Why does the girl talk about global warming? 42. What can be inferred from the discussion?